Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I have to admit, when I first bought my house, I didn't realize what a piece of work the neighbor lady was. See, I live on a quiet cul-de-sac with driveways lining both sides of the circle. Plenty of space for all of us to park our cars and have guests over, you'd think. But this Karen character, she lived right next door and seemed to think the whole street was her own personal driveway. It all came to a head the weekend of her birthday party. I had worked a long week and was looking forward to a lazy Saturday at home. But when I woke up that morning and looked out the window, I could not believe my eyes. Her driveway and mine were completely full with cars, must have been 30 of them at least. There was no space left anywhere on the street. I even saw a few were parked on the edges of people's yards and lawns. I was furious. How could she just assume all that space was for her party? Did she not think anyone else on the street might need to come and go? I marched right over there to give her a piece of my mind. Karen answered the door with a snooty look like she was queen of the neighborhood. "What do you want?" she demanded. "I want to know why there's cars blocking my entire driveway," I said, doing my best to keep my cool. "Some of us have places to be, you know." She just rolled her eyes at me. "Oh, relax, it's just a party. We're not hurting anything. If you ask me, you should be thankful I'm bringing property values up around here with my bash." I could not believe the gall of this woman. "Those are my guests, parking where they please. You shouldn't have bought a house on such a small street if you wanted space for your little soirees." By this point I was seeing red. Forget being polite, this entitled brat needed to be put in her place. "Listen here, Karen. You've got 1 hour to clear those cars out before I start calling tow trucks. This is my property and you don't get to decide who parks where. Got it?" To my surprise, she just smirked. "Go ahead and call. I'd love to see you try. My guests paid good money for the entertainment I provided. You'll be the one paying if any of them get towed. Now if you'll excuse me, my actual friends are waiting." And with that, she slammed the door in my face. I was seething. Who did this lady think she was? But I wasn't about to be pushed around. I pulled out my phone and started making calls, first to the non-emergency police line to file a complaint about vehicles blocking my driveway access. They said an officer would come take a report. Next, I rang up Jimmy's Towing, telling them to be on standby. I wasn't bluffing about clearing those cars out. While I waited, I went inside to grab my cameras. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, a cop cruiser pulls up. I let the officer know the full story, showing him footage of Karen berating me earlier. He went over to have a chat with the birthday girl. I watched through the window as her smile turned to a scowl. The cop started writing tickets for every car not in her actual driveway. That's when Karen stormed over, yelling about how I was ruining her special day. I just smirked. "You should have thought of that before taking over my property, Karen. Now you get to explain to all your friends why they're getting fines." The officer told her if the cars weren't moved in the next 30 minutes, they'd start getting towed too. Her face turned an ugly shade of purple, but she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on legally. With a huff, she stomped off to start the evacuation. It was immensely satisfying watching all those vehicles clear out under the threat. Karen was screaming at people the whole time, blaming me, of course, for being unreasonable. Too bad. So sad. You don't mess with another person's property and not face consequences. Once the street was empty, the cop thanked me for my patience. Said he was glad I went about it the right way instead of taking the law into my own hands. That should have been the end of it. But this was Karen we were dealing with after all. A couple days later, as I was pulling out of my driveway, her fancy convertible swerved and cut me off, slamming on the brakes. I had to stand on my own to avoid rear-ending her. I beeped in protest, but she just rolled down the window and yelled, "Oops!" with a smirk. I knew then she was out for retaliation. Luckily, I had been documenting all of Karen's bad behavior on my security cameras ever since she moved in. I decided it was time to fight fire with fire. I got online and posted the videos publicly, tagging the local police department. Within an hour, I had hundreds of views and comments in support. It blew up even more when some neighbors chimed in with their own stories of Karen's entitlement. The final nail in the coffin? Footage of her dangerous driving and admission of doing it to me on purpose. That's when the cops paid her a visit. Turns out it wasn't Karen's first rodeo either. She had a history of complaints against her. This time they weren't letting her off with a warning. She ended up with a hefty fine, points on her license, and a month-long suspension. After that, Karen steered clear of me. Guess she finally realized actions have consequences, and I wasn't going to just roll over for her nonsense. The street's been peaceful ever since. Sometimes the best way to deal with a Karen is stand up to them with proof. Get the law involved if needed. They only understand force, not reason or courtesy. One way or another, they'll learn not to mess with your property or harass your neighbors. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My friend was stationed in Korea at the time on a 3-year tour. He had sponsored his wife, who is Korean, when a new warrant officer arrived approximately 6 months after his arrival. My friend never really cared for this officer. However, he dealt with it. It was a known fact within the office that this officer was married with a family back in the States. Well, shortly after arriving in Korea, the warrant officer met a young 20-year-old Korean girl whom he began dating. They dated quite a bit, and everyone kind of turned a blind eye. This is actually illegal in the military. Before I say anything, please note I married a lovely Korean woman, and I am very happy with her and think Korean people are great. With this being said, due to how Korean society treats school education, young Korean people generally lack the relationship maturity when it comes to dealing with the opposite sex. As an American, dating at 14, 15 years old is not uncommon. My first girlfriend, our kiss, was at 13. I don't think that's unusual. My wife's first boyfriend, a kiss, was at 21, and most of her friends are right around that age group. Many Korean girls that I know had their first boyfriends, kisses, around the age of 20, 22 years old, which means this girl's first boyfriend was this officer. She didn't have the relationship maturity experience to see everything. I'm not saying Korean people are immature. However, I just thought that point needs to be clarified. In fact, they are very hardworking. Well, it really surprised everyone, especially my friend when this officer proposed to this girl. My friend got extremely worried at this point. What was this guy doing? Was he really this stupid? Well, he still turned a blind eye. It was time for the officer to go back home. By this time, the girl had moved all of her stuff to the officer's home. The officer had all of her belongings packed up and sent back to America. The officer brought the girl to the airport to catch the flight. This girl went out and got her passport, told her parents she was moving to America, and dropped everything in her life for this guy, whom she didn't even know was married. Well, they got to the airport, and it was her first time there. They walked around, grabbed a coffee, etc. When he told her he had to go to the bathroom, he grabbed his bag and went off to the bathroom. She waited for him, waited for about 30 minutes before she decided to start looking for him. She spent a good 45 minutes checking and asking around if anyone had seen him. She got airport security involved about 2 hours later, but they weren't much help. She was in tears. Of course, she thought the worst had happened to the love of her life. She called my friend in tears, and my friend was obviously confused. The flight had been scheduled to leave 2 hours ago. What happened? He handed the phone to his wife so she could speak Korean, and he saw his wife's face go from a look of concern to confusion, and then he knew. Her face turned angry. No, angry is a nice way of saying this. She was furious at this scumbag. I'm sure at this point she'd like nothing better than to cut his balls off. His wife explained everything to my friend. The officer had abandoned his girlfriend, future wife, at the airport. Not only did he leave this girl at the airport, with the pretense of a life together, but he also took all of her stuff to America. My friend rushed to the airport, a lengthy 3-hour drive, to collect her. On the way, he took the time to make a few phone calls. He had one of his soldiers even pull the officer's home phone number. Let's just say my friend had very interesting conversations with the following individuals. Commander of the officer's former unit. Commander of the officer's next unit. His wife. I'll let you assume how those conversations went. Suffice it to say that the officer was discharged from the military and received a court-martial. Here is what I know happened for a fact. He got divorced, alimony, child support. He got kicked out of the military. He lost his retirement. This was worth millions of dollars over the course of a lifetime. The next one is a petty revenge story. Moved into a nice little neighborhood with my husband and our soon-to-be newborn. One night, my husband was walking our corgi puppy, and the neighbor across from us came outside. The corgi puppy ran over to her, and the woman shrieked and ran inside. My husband came out later without the puppy, and she cussed him out, screaming at him. He tried to apologize, but she kept screaming. A few days later, a humane officer came to my door, woke up my newborn, and told me he would give me a fine for allowing my dog to charge our neighbor if it happened again. I guess he was under the impression this had happened more than one time. He said my neighbor was terrified for her safety. I told him I have a 7-pound corgi puppy, literally the least terrifying animal on earth. She also yells at our other neighbor who mows the vacant lot beside her anytime he gets close to her grass, which gets pretty tall. They've gotten into screaming matches, and she's even called the cops on him multiple times, never ending in her favor. I found an online website that anonymously sends people glitter bomb holiday Christmas cards, so when you open it, it shoots glitter everywhere. About a month goes by, and I was wondering if this website just took my money, or if she just wasn't going to say anything about it. I swear to you, a cop comes to my door, asks to come inside, and then bursts out laughing, explaining he's here over a glitter Christmas card. He tells me I made his day, and that was the funniest call he's ever responded to, and leaves. Totally legal and great petty revenge. The next one is a malicious compliance story. In 1987, my dad got his first high school summer job on the kitchen staff for a local pizza place. The place was a family-owned business and did make great pizzas, but they had just started to gain traction and had opened a couple of secondary locations, causing the owner's ego to inflate a little. This meant the owner was getting focused on their image, particularly regarding the dress code. The dress code for servers and kitchen staff was the same. The company's shirt on top tucked in with a belt, either black pants or a black skirt, and loafers or heels. No shorts, untucked shirts, or casual shoes were allowed. The issue with this was that it was summer in the 80s in a town where AC wasn't a thing yet, and the kitchen staff were standing next to pizza ovens all day. The girls on staff would wear skirts that fit the code, but they were able to free the knee and get some breeze on their legs from the fans, while the guys constantly complained to their kitchen manager that they were going to overheat in pants and needed to wear shorts in the back. The manager always said the dress code was an owner's policy and that if they disobeyed it, they would have to get written up at the least. So one day my dad and some of the other guys had had enough, so they asked their girlfriends for help and came in to work with skirts themselves. The owner walked into his original store that afternoon for a check-in to find a dozen sweaty teenage boys with crap-eating grins wearing skirts so short they probably would have been dress-coded even if they were girls, and tossing pizzas like nothing was different, led by a 5'2" 15-year-old kid with earrings. Yeah, my dad's a short king, which adds to this. After that, guys were allowed to wear shorts on the kitchen staff, but still not as servers. My dad and his friends were not fired, but were warned to never pull that kind of crap again, and the pizza place just celebrated their 50th anniversary this summer. The next one is an entitled people story. I, F now 42, live in Copenhagen, but the rest of my family does not, so my sisters like to come visit for a few days every now and then to hang out and enjoy some sightseeing and good food. This happened in December 2019, so before 2020, which means lots of people everywhere and no restrictions of any kind. My little sister, now 38, was here for a Christmas visit in December, and we were enjoying the lights, the sights, and some lovely Christmassy delights. It was a cold day, and we decided that we would visit a small-ish cafe that makes really tasty and very beautiful all things chocolate. We wanted to have some of their seasonal hot chocolate, which was kind of pricey but well worth the price tag. It was a salted caramel and clementine hot chocolate lavishly decorated, by the way. They also had 3 kinds of pretty but regular hot chocolates, but this one was their Instagram hot chocolate, if you know what I mean. My sister found us a table, and I got in line to order 2 of these chocolate wonders. There was a bit of a queue, but it moved along fairly quickly. I got to the counter, placed my order, and the chocolate goddess at the counter asked me for my very feminine name to call when my order is up, and informed me that it would be about 10 minutes. I went to sit down and wait with my sister at the other end of the cafe, still well within hearing distance. So just about 10 minutes later, the male half of a couple placed an order and went to sit down with his girlfriend, 2 tables away from the counter. At the same time, my name was called. I couldn't see their table as it was behind me, but my sister told me later that the girlfriend pointed at our chocolates immediately, and the man more or less sprinted up to get them while the woman who made the hot, heavenly drinks had her back turned. I walked up there, and my drinks were, of course, gone. One of the chocolate goddesses came over with the next order and called a name. I asked where the order for my name was, and she said that when she looked over her shoulder to check, she assumed I had gotten them because they were gone. A chocolate god interjected that he saw a man take my order and point to the table with the thieving couple, who were busy taking lots and lots of photos of the drinks. The goddess went over with me in tow and asked what they had ordered. They had ordered regular hot chocolates, but the girlfriend had wanted these when she saw them in all their glory. Just sitting on the counter with no one to claim them for at least 5 minutes. So she thought it didn't matter if they took them instead. They were unclaimed for 5 friggin' seconds, lady. The goddess explained that the drinks were not theirs and told them to wait for their order. No, they are ours now, the girlfriend claimed and pulled the finder's keeper's card, all while looking triumphantly at me. The goddess asked the guy which name he gave at the counter, and he claimed he gave the same name as mine, hence the mix-up. So I asked him what name was called. Surprise, surprise, he could not answer. Now the girlfriend was getting upset and sat there saying no, no, no repeatedly, while the guy asked if I could not just order new ones, since clearly they had made a mistake and the drinks were already on their table. Why? So you can steal those too? The goddess asked if I wanted those specific 2 drinks or if she could maybe make me some new ones. I asked if the couple would be allowed to keep the mouth-watering morsels of goodness if I wanted new ones, and she said yes. Well then, of course, I wanted those specific drinks, and now the girlfriend was visibly crying. The goddess took the drinks away and gave them to me. As we were walking away, I inspected the drinks, and told her she better pour these away and make new ones because 1, they were now cold, and 2, there were tears in one of them. Though I enjoy salted caramel, this level of salt was a bit much. She grinned, took them away, and made me new ones that were served at the table. My sister and I agreed that these were the best hot chocolates we have ever had. We enjoyed them loudly while the thieving couple stared daggers at us. The next one is an entitled parent story. Hi, I'm a 29F and I'm pregnant with our first child, with our due date fast approaching. My husband is very excited, but his mother is really starting to push boundaries as we get closer to the little one's arrival. A bit of backstory. My husband and I have been married for 2 years, but we started trying for a baby 3 years ago. It was a long journey with infertility. I was at the doctor's nearly every month getting blood work done and doing different hormonal therapies. We suffered 3 miscarriages, including one on our wedding day. As time went by and we weren't successful, my mother-in-law grew more and more impatient and disappointed. She would never badger my husband, but she would badger me about the treatments and why they weren't working. To say the least, it was stressful. It got to the point that the doctor figured our only chance was IVF, and my husband and I had to make a decision because we didn't have the funding for such treatment. So we decided to call it quits and accept that we were most likely going to have a child-free life. When I informed my mother-in-law about our decision, she just stared at me with a look of pure disappointment and wouldn't talk to me. To say that she made me feel even more of a failure would be an understatement. Then, by happy chance, we fell pregnant completely naturally. Of course, I wanted to keep it a secret for as long as possible due to our past miscarriages, but it was hard to do because I got really sick. I was so sick, I went days without food and was still vomiting. When we eventually did tell the family, my mother-in-law was over the moon, to say the least. I was 4 months along at the time, and she started rubbing my belly and insisting that it needs to be a boy because the family needs a boy to carry on the family name. As my pregnancy progressed, my sickness did not go away and my appetite did not return, so to say that I was having a hard time and not enjoying my pregnancy would be an understatement. I was barely 6 months along when my mother-in-law started insisting that I will forget all about it and be ready to have another one before I knew it. Our first child has yet to arrive, and she is already insisting on baby number 2. As my due date started to draw near, my anxiety began to grow as my mother-in-law began to make insane demands. She lives 4 hours away from us, for a good reason, and she started making plans that we are to come visit near the end of September. The baby may only be 1 week old by then if I go past my due date, so that the family can meet the baby, and she can hold and feed the baby as much as she wants while I get some rest. I am not okay with this. First off, it's my baby, and I am not comfortable handing them around to a whole bunch of people before they are even 1 month old. Second, I am the only one who can feed my baby in the early stages unless my midwife or doctor states that they need to go on formula. Third, I don't want to travel and be put on display when I am freshly postpartum. I have talked to my husband extensively about this, and he is of the stance that we will wait and see when the baby actually arrives and how the birth goes. So because we wouldn't commit to my mother-in-law's plans, she informed my husband that she was going to come and stay with us around the due date. He shut this down real quick because he doesn't want to play host to anyone at that time, and neither do I. So now she's very unhappy. I have also told my husband that there will be no video calls while we are in the hospital. Everyone will receive the same birth announcement text, and they can wait until we are ready for them to visit the baby once we are home. Needless to say, my mother-in-law is not happy with this arrangement, and I am terrified that she is just going to show up and expect to be the first to hold the baby when they arrive. Also, she learned the gender when my husband accidentally let it slip that we are having a girl. Well, she was disappointed, but immediately started pushing pink at me. I turned her down because I like gender-neutral colors, and the nursery is woodland animal-themed. She told me that we are going to have a major problem with the fact that I don't like pink and I don't want to dress her in frilly, uncomfortable dresses. My kid is going to be in onesies and sleepers for as long as possible because they are comfy, and I don't have to stress about them getting ruined due to the fact that a baby and messes go hand in hand. All of her actions and pushing of her agenda have made me feel like I really need to keep my guard up around her and my baby. I feel like she is going to try to undermine me at every turn and do what she wants despite what I say. I also have a recurring nightmare of her just taking my baby while I am sleeping under the guise of, "I was just helping." I have tried making my husband aware of my fears, but he thinks I am being slightly dramatic and that she won't disrespect me as a mother in such a way. However, I am really unsure. Am I really overreacting, or are my fears justified? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.